Hi, welcome to another episode of Burning Questions. My name's Alec, I'm the technical manager at Quelfire, and I'm once again joined by Darryl Wells, who heads up our research and development. Thank you once again for joining us, Darryl, today. It's been quite a while since we had a discussion. I can't remember the episode we did when we talked about fire testing, so I thought it might just be quite good to have a catch up, talk about things that Quelfire are doing, some stuff in the industry, and also cover some topics we didn't on the last video. Sure. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I suppose the first important question for our customers will be, are Quelfire still even fire testing at the moment?
Sure. Yeah, we are, certainly. It's a core part of Quelfire, the research and development department. It's what keeps us alive. It keeps us evolving by fire testing new situations, new solutions, to suit the needs of the market, because the market is ever changing.
Yeah, constantly.
New services, new wall types, and therefore a key part of what we do is keeping our ears to the ground and finding what's out there, what are the challenges, and then including that as part of our research and development pipeline to ensure that we are keeping up with the market.
Yeah, I have to say with the research and development teams, you take that feedback that we're getting quite well, and you are doing some unique things. I suppose can't really let too much out of the bag at the moment, but is there anything sort of that springs to mind that you can share that's coming out quite soon that's probably quite unique that people weren't really aware of?
Yeah, sure. So I guess one of the key new developments is there's a lot of data centres.
Yes.
Popping up around the country. So we've got some new details for some specific applications there, including some unique tray systems, cable tray systems, and obviously they use a lot of white wool. We've obviously done testing with Euroclad Firemaster system. We've got a scope for that. We have got some other white wool brands in the pipeline. So
hopefully coming out very soon. It's just,
sure.
I suppose that goes quite nicely into my next sort of question for you is what sort of challenges are we facing? For some people out there, I think, they seem to think testing's quite easy and quick and type thing. So what sort of challenges are we facing? I mean, one of the things going back to that, where we can't shout out more to the audience now, is paperwork. I don't think people realise how long paperwork is and costs, and obviously we can't go into the cost aspects, but it's not as simple as just doing a test. There's so much behind it as well.
Yeah, there is, and I guess that's where the standards is possibly one of the constraints. The standards are great from a laying out, do this and you achieve this, that and the other, give a scope of application to a certain point, but we're out of the realms of that sometimes with varying wall constructions, varying new services that aren't a standard service, and so the standard doesn't tell you, and almost what you test is what you get. So there is a few limitations within the standards that can prevent some delays, because it's trying to work out what you need to test to get the best scope. You would have any more comments on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, because it's not that, we have many discussions that there are a lot of things we would like to test, like, the amount of conversations you have about plasterboard ceilings, and like you just mentioned white wall and other things. I know shaft walls are a big thing that come up a lot. Yeah. I don't think people realise it's not that we're not necessarily unwilling to test, it's just the fact that there isn't a scope, so we have to try and work out a way of testing that benefits everyone, because we're not physically able to test absolutely every scenario and do hundreds and hundreds of tests because a shaft wall isn't covered for absolutely every scenario. So we've got to try and work within the realms of reality, I think, and I think people realise that constraint that we do have as manufacturers. We try our best, but that's the big thing for it. So I suppose another challenge then, and I don't think, well, obviously I was trying to get your opinion on that. The BS 476, which is the old British testing standard, is now been earmarked to be removed. So for reaction to fire, it's 2025, and for fire resistance, which is where Quelfire delve into, that's for 2029. So I suppose for the audience, is that going to impact Quelfire in any way? Are we worried about that?
Yeah, no, it's it's ultimately it's not going to impact Quelfire.
Yeah.
I've actually only witnessed a couple of BS476 tests, and that was quite a few years ago.
Yes, that must be before my time.
And you probably not
Yeah,
even...
no, never
So
touched it. Never
it's
seen it.
BSEN testing is the standards we're working to, and so everything that we market and sell now is BSEN
Yeah, so
standard tested. And so any BS476, we've either retested it to the new standard, or we've just
it's not part of our range.
It's not part of our range anymore. So we've already ahead of that.
That's great.
In
Yeah.
terms of testing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good. I just thought that could help everyone out. So the other reason why I wanted to sit down and chat with you today is the main focus on our last video was service penetrations, which is our main bread and butter. You know, obviously it's what we're known for, but it's not the only area of passive fire protection we cover with some of our products. So I wanted to delve into linear gaps.
Yeah.
So to sort of help the audience first, I suppose, what is a linear gap, I suppose? Yeah,
so linear gap is a joint that is fire sealed to maintain the fire rating of a floor or wall. And we, like you say, we're not just service penetration specialists. We've got lots of linear joint testing and solutions. So yeah, we have been doing some more testing recently, and it'll be released fairly soon.
Yeah.
In some thinner substrates than we've previously done. Aerated concrete floors, slabs, and walls.
Yeah.
We have some new linear joint data coming soon, so look out for that.
Yeah, I was going to say it's
providing some fantastic ratings there again, up to EI240.
Yeah.
You've got a little sample demo there, haven't you, Alec? Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say it's quite unique. So I suppose for a lot of people there, not to get confused with cavity barriers, linear gaps tend to be quite small. So for example, this would be classed as a vertical, but if you turned it, you could have head of wall, or if it's through a floor, horizontal seal. So it tends to be gaps, I'd say less than 100 mil usually, but we do up to 50 mil. We have some 60 mil with acrylic, but mainly 50 mil. With our QI Intrafoam, we can go up to 75 mil, but it's those small gaps. Larger gaps start to get into the realms of cavity barriers. So again, obviously we just talked about BS476, Darryl, and we don't test that, we test the BSEN standard. So what's the test standard we do for?
Yeah, so BSEN 1366 Part 4 is the linear joint standard, which we do all our linear joint testing to.
Yeah, and
that's what we've been doing recently. And included within that is some single side install details. So where perhaps in a basement you've got a rigid blockwork wall up against the concrete slab, sealing the head of the wall joint, for example.
Yeah.
And you can use a rock fibre backing with a acrylic in front of it. So they're coming out soon.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's been tested and fantastic results. So
for our audience, I suppose challenge-wise, you sort of have to understand the sort of testing. So with the way a furnace works, there's only certain ways we can test linear gaps. So it's usually a vertical one or a horizontal one. So you can't really do what's known as the head of wall. So what testing do we have to do to get that head of wall testing?
Yeah, so within the standard, again, it gives you a scope. So if you test in this horizontal orientation, it covers for a head of wall orientation. So there's a bit of a table there in the standard. So again, this is where we have to do this before we go out and test what we want. We actually look at what does the standard say, how do we get the best scope by testing as few specimens as possible to get the best scope is ultimately what we do.
So I suppose that because of that, that's where we noticed the gap in the market with head of wall seals. Because of that horizontal test, that's typically in floors that are 150 mil thick, which most manufacturers do. So that's why a lot of evidence out there is 150 mil or thicker, which we realised isn't realistic, as walls are 100 mil or 140 mil. So that's why that new evidence you've done, you've gone away and done that 100 mil to try and get that bigger scope, haven't you?
That's right. Yeah. Very
good.
So
I suppose another thing as well is, and it comes up quite a lot, and I saw this on LinkedIn, so I thought you could help me, is backing material that's used. So there are sort of two backing material types we tend to test with. So it's usually either a PE backing rod, which I'll let you explain more what that is, or rock fibre. So first of all, what is a PE backing rod and why do we tend to use that if we can, first of all?
Yeah, so PE backing rod is polyethylene material,
Yeah.
which is very lightweight and it disappears pretty quick when exposed to
Definitely.
flame. Well, you like to say it's like what you get in a swimming pool.
Yeah, like the elder generation use for their water aerobics and stuff like that.
So you imagine that in a fire, it disappears pretty quickly. So that's typically like a sacrificial backing material.
Yeah.
So it doesn't add to the fire performance, but that's to obviously ensure you get the right depth of product. So the Quelfire acrylic sealant, for example. So that means that you can use it without backing, any backing, or any other type of backing material.
Yeah.
Whereas if you test with a rock fibre backing material, for example, it's A1, non-combustible, that enhances the fire performance of the seal. So if our detail says and has been tested with rock fibre, it must have rock fibre insulation into the same or greater density as what's been tested.
Yeah. So I think that's really good for our audience to know, which is why it's important to check our detailed drawings to see what backing material is stated. So, okay, I suppose with linear gap seals as well, one of the other things that people might not be aware of is, especially for the UK, is the national annex around door frames. So can you explain, not obviously don't go too much in detail, but the fact that how our acrylic sealant's been tested for door frames? Yeah,
so in the new update of 1366 Part 4, which was 2021.
Yeah, right at the end, around
end
the
of
same
2021. There were some annexes added to the standard, and one of those is for testing linear joints for scope of application around fire doors, typically timber fire doors.
Yeah.
So we've done testing to that new standard since it was released.
Yeah.
And achieved some good results and scope of application for around timber door sets. So
I've done a separate video on it, but I thought I'd bring it up for the audience because I know there's a lot of confusion out there with inspectors that are saying that the sealant has to be tested BS 476, which again it mentioned is being removed and it's an older standard, or they mention the door standard. So there is another standard that's acceptable. It's BSEN 1366 Part 4, which is what Darryl just mentioned there. We've done a test to as well. So yeah, there's lots of linear. So I suppose the last question, just for anyone that's interested, is what are the two products that we sell for linear gaps? Sort of what's the main products, and what's the difference between them?
Yeah, so primarily the Quelfire acrylic sealant, and then which is this here, and then you've got your Inchifoam, which is a graphite-based intumescent with foam, and that allows for a lot more movement capabilities. So they're the two options, different applications, different fire ratings, depending on what you have on site.
Yeah, reach out and we can talk to you through it. So yeah, that was good. I thought it'd be good. Obviously, it's much more simpler than service penetration, doing a gap. I thought it'd be good to share the audience, but I suppose service penetrations are Quelfire's bread and butter, as I said earlier. So it wouldn't be any sort of test video where we didn't sort of cover some topics. So we didn't really cover it in the last video, but I know we've been doing quite extensive testing since our last meeting. So there's two topics I particularly wanted to talk about. And the first one is what's known as partial penetrations. So again, I suppose just for the audience, because terminology can get confused, what do we mean when we say partial penetration?
So partial penetration is technically where a service penetrates a fire compartment wall or floor, I guess, but it doesn't penetrate through the full construction.
Yeah.
So you're looking at things like socket boxes or conduits and cables at the top of a wall where they come down to a socket box. They're partially penetrating the firewall.
Yeah.
And currently there isn't a test standard for that.
No.
There has been one in draft format for a while that I've seen and had comments on, but there isn't a proper standard currently. So we have to test to the principles of the 1366 Part 3 to achieve a scope of application, which you can do. And we have done a lot, especially with conduits.
Yes.
You have to test socket boxes, but you have to fire test from both directions. So you're testing from the fire side and the non-fire side.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have got a good library of details for that, haven't we?
Yeah, huge library, I
And
suppose.
we've still got some more applications in the pipeline, which we were discussing just yesterday, with some new tests coming up. So
Yeah, loads. Well, that's going back to your earlier point. The feedback that we're getting is, I think, what I've noticed, and you might have noticed, is that the smaller, maybe people have said insignificant penetrations, such as things that were less than 40 mil, because people have the wrong belief with that. Section approved document B, linear gaps. I think now people are starting to ask more questions. It's, like I said to you, it's more the nitty gritty that we're having to look at. We're doing a lot of small partial penetration radiators, socket boxes, cables that have never been looked at, linear gap seals. So yeah, it's been crazy. And I suppose, again, for the audience, the reason why we stuck to part 3 is because that's the full penetration test standard. And there's a lot more information in there, how to position thermocouples and stuff like that. And yeah, we've seen the draft. It's part 14, I think the draft is. So we've used some guidance of what the methodology there as well to test it in the best way. Agreed with the accredited test labs that we use that that's a feasible way of testing it. Because the only other way I know of testing partial penetrations is in the wall standard, but they test that as a whole system and it's not as accurate, I think. We test our systems with the TCs and that, so it's been, quite good. So in our new Quell selector that has just launched very recently, there is a whole dedicated section of partial penetrations. Socket boxes with putty pads is separate, but that's another area that I can't imagine anyone's gone as far with socket boxes as we have, because every test I see with the R&D team, you've included a new weird and wonderful way with socket boxes, even just with the fixings and stuff. So yeah, that's been really useful. And I suppose the other big hot topic, and we've done some sort of separate videos on it, are shaft walls, which sort of the challenges with that. And I know obviously we've been looking at those areas. So again, I suppose for the audience, when I say a shaft wall, and we're talking a flexible shaft wall, what do I mean by that?
Yeah, so they're walls that are built from a single side.
Yeah.
Effectively, and all the core manufacturers have a wall system like that typically, and it consists of a core board, and then on the corridor side you have the fireline plasterboard makeup. But yeah, it's all installed from a single side typically, and it's not symmetrical, the wall system. Hence the reason you have to then fire test from both directions to achieve a scope of application. It's not in the standard as you test this, it covers for all these other wall systems. So it requires a lot of testing to achieve a good scope of application. But we have invested in that, and we're well on the journey. And indeed, we've got a load of details in the
a load of details. But I suppose the challenge is, what I think people need to realise is, they're great for what they're designed for, building from one side only. Yeah. But as penetrations tend to require both an E and an I fire resistant rating, that's integrity and insulation, it's quite difficult to achieve that insulation rating when you don't have access to the other side with services.
That's correct, yeah, it is a challenge.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of details out there, but for those out there designing and looking at shaft walls, it's something that you might need to contemplate, because it is extremely hard to, especially when you've got cables and cable trays with lots of metal, to get maybe that fire resistance rating you want, and you should reach out and we can look at other options. I've worked on a lot of projects recently that just use them because it's a shaft, but they have enough room to and access to install a normal wall. So it's like looking at that area, do you need that wall type or can you change it? So obviously you mentioned white wall and shaft wall, but obviously it's Quelfire have tested quite a lot of unique walls, isn't it? So it's like, I know another unique one we've tested was the 60-minute single skin plasterboard wall, which again is not technically covered in BSEN 1366 part 3, but there is a small section that allows you to test other walls. But it's, I think, going back to your earlier point, the test standards aren't keeping up with the industry, because
they just take a long time to develop from the feedback and new solutions in the market, and then it's like, well, we need to actually add this to a test standard. It takes such a long time. So
no, great, thank you. Like I said, it's good to know, and all our stuff is coming. There's a lot more coming, so keep up. So the last thing I wanted to ask you, Darryl, the big word I wanted to use this year was the word collaboration. So I was going to say, from an R&D's perspective, how important has it been with like collaboration, collaboration with customers, but also product.
Yeah, it's key.
Yeah.
And this is what I say. We're always going to have no as an answer to certain applications. No, we haven't got something, because that's the way we are. It's yes, we have got a solution. No, we haven't. But those no's are no for now, and not necessarily no for never.
Yeah.
The more times we get people saying, "Oh, I've got this application," and we say, "No, we haven't got a solution," we are making note of that, and that's key to our R&D pipeline. 100%. So, no, we appreciate feedback, and we will continue to develop and test to create solutions for the market. So, thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, no, thank you, and thank you for joining today, Darryl. So it's nice, short and sweet, but I know you've got a lot of things in the pipeline at the moment you're testing as well, so I'm sure we'll come back with another update video next year. So thank you very much for joining. And,
thanks, Alec.
Thanks, everyone. As usual, our contact details will appear on the screen, but like I said, if you check our Quell selector, we have released a lot of new details. The big difference, and I've mentioned this in another video before, is, as Darryl mentioned it, paperwork can take a long time. So where we do a fire test, we typically then normally wait until we can get a classification report that defines the scope of application, which is done by accreditation body. This is taking quite some time, and at the moment, we're just releasing some details that have been really vital for projects early on. There will be limitations on that, and they're written on the drawings. But if you reach out to me, we can discuss this in more. But yeah, keep a lookout. We're always testing. And if you've got anything weird and wonderful, please send it through, like Darryl said. We may say no now, but it might be something we're interested in. Thank you very much.